Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our ongoing Saturday morning Science of Mind conversation series. This is Mark Gilbert. I am happy to be back with you on our rotating schedule of different speakers coming to you to discuss the concepts of the science of mind and the works of Ernest Holmes. And just a little bit of a precursor as we get into today's topic, and that is, as you probably may know by now, if you're a regular viewer of this particular program, is that during the first part of the year, going through January until late in the summer, we go through the Science of Mind textbook by Ernest Holmes and discuss it chapter by chapter and unit by unit, and giving you information on what Ernest said in the essential book that's used to teach the science of mind. And the rest of the year, what we've been doing for a couple of years now is going through resources from the Science of Mind archives and finding other things of Ernest Holmes that are important for you to know about. And so today, what I have done is selected a chapter out of the book, Ernest Holmes at Asilomar. And so it's one of his lectures that he gave in 1958 called Time is the Timeless. Time is the Timeless. And in fact, that will be our topic today, is Time is the Timeless. And before we get into that topic, I want to say just a little bit about the book, of Ernest Holmes at Asilomar. As you can see from the cover, I had a hand in putting this book together. I am on the board of the archives, and also as a key researcher for them, going through their files and things, and was inventorying the works of Holmes, and discovered that we had a lot of his lectures and classes from Asilomar, and they had never been put out to the public before. And so a couple of years ago, started compiling it, brought forth the idea that we should publish a book. And the idea caught hold, and through a joint effort of myself and a number of other people working both with the archives and Science of Mind Publishing, brought out this book, which is over 400 pages and includes lectures, all the lectures we were able to find in classes that he did at Asilomar in the 1950s. So it's a valuable resource for you, but I also give it with a caution. I encourage everybody who's a student of Science of Mind to get a copy of this book and read it if you haven't already. It's available through Amazon, and you can just search on the title and you'll find links to it. It's available in both Kindle and paperback. Get the version that you want, but I would encourage you to get the paperback because you're going to want to mark it up. You're going to want to look at the pictures, hold it in your hands, etc. But one of the cautions that I often make about this book is that we have to think in terms of who came to Asilomar in the 1950s. And these were people who were fans of Ernest Holmes because he would speak every year there. And these were people who were well versed in the philosophy. These were people who understood Science of Mind in its basic concepts, generally speaking. And they would come in, and he would do lectures that were not your basic presentations. Now, Ernest did a lot of basic information. He wrote articles for the Science of Mind magazine every month. He had radio shows, various radio shows, and a short-lived TV show that he did. He also wrote many, many books, and he did Sunday services, talks at different theaters in the Los Angeles area. He really produced a lot of output, and he also taught classes at nighttime. And from my research and reviewing the works of Ernest Holmes, I have to say that the time he was at Asilomar And his nighttime classes were where he got into the most mystical and deeper concepts of the philosophy of science of mind. Most of his other material, the magazines, his phonograph records, his radio shows, and so forth, they tended to be more towards the basics. Yes, he would meld into it because it's, how do you talk about the science of mind without getting into some of the more mystical concepts of the philosophy? But I think when people first approach science of mind, they approach it from the standpoint that I'm in this world and my world's not going exactly what I want, and I want to change my physical reality. And so a lot of the initial teachings to people are about using the changing of your thinking to change your physical reality of what's going on in your life. And so I consider that a lot of that is the basic information that's given to people about how you can tap into the power in the universe and use it for your own lives and that sort of thing. But he actually had a lot of mystical stuff, and his talks and classes at Asilomar really got in the mystical side. And what do we mean by the mystical side? What is the meaning of life? Why are we here? What is the purpose of, how does all of this fit together? And that's where we're going this morning when we look at his talk from 1958, where he talks about time is the timeless. And in fact, he did a talk every night in 1958 where it was always fear is faith, the finite is the infinite, etc. It was like taking two things that we think are opposites and showing that they're really unified in a grand oneness. And more on this talk in a second. But as we jump into this, I just want to mention that this is a conversation program, and those who have viewed me leading these programs before, I always want to get your input and your feedback. I'll be monitoring the chat and invite you to, if you're watching live, to drop a little note in the comment field so I can see where you are and where you're from. And so I have a few names already. Let's just jump up and Shay, it's good to have you back. I know last time I was here, you were here as well. And I believe you're in Colorado, if I recall correctly. Let's see who else we've got. Peter, good morning, Peter. Glad to have you here. Glad to see everybody is joining us this morning. We've got Kathy. Kathy's my good friend. She's the executive director of the Science of Mind Archives, and she's given you a code there, I guess you can type into to get the book. That's great. Thank you, Kathy. And we've also got Wayne. Wayne is that pioneer spirit is with us again. We're glad to have him, and Kathy wants to give us the Science of Mind Archives website, and I always try to do that in the program as well. Well, let's go ahead and get it out there. Encourage you to go to that resource. We have tons and tons of material out there on the archives available for you, and it's a great and wonderful resource, and I hope that you take advantage of it. If you don't have time to write that down, just go to Google and search on Science of Mind Archives, and you'll find it. And also look for their YouTube page. We've got a lot of great videos out there, so search for Science of Mind Archives on YouTube. And encourage you also to pick up the book, Ernest Holmes at Asilomar. As I mentioned a moment ago, this book is a compilation of his talks and classes that he did. And these were people who were versed in science of mind, and he went a little bit deeper. And we're going to go a little bit deeper this morning talking about it. But I do want you, as you are interacting and listening this morning, if you're joining us live, be sure to drop a note of who you are and where you're from in the chat so I can show that up. I would also encourage you, if you got a question or a comment about anything that I am saying, I would encourage you to also drop that in the comments. And I want to be a dialogue. So if there's something I'm saying you're not understanding, or you want to go a little different with it, or you've got a reaction to it, be sure to drop that in the comments so that we can find and bring your voice into this conversation this particular morning. And we've got Linda joining us from Las Vegas. Thank you, Linda. Hope Las Vegas is cool today. I know here in the Denver area, it's getting up into the high 90s. So I know it's got to be hot in Vegas. So stay cool down there. And she is with the Art of the Soul in Las Vegas. So thank you for joining us today, Linda, and everybody who's joining us both live and on the recording. Hope that this is beneficial for you. And where we're going to go for the next few minutes is I want to, Wayne's telling me where he is. He's a redneck from Calgary. Great. Okay. Anyway, Where are we going? I want to look at Ernest Holmes' lecture from 1958 called Time is the Timeless. Time is the Timeless. And in fact, I'm going to read you some various quotes from this book. And I'm going to talk about his lecture from 1958 and what some of the major takeaways are, I think can be beneficial for you. And later on, we're going to circle back around. Actually, if we have time, I want to look at a new book that's come out this year from philosopher Ken Wilber, because there's a lot of overlap between what Holmes is talking about in the 1950s and what Wilber mentions in his recent book. And so hopefully we can bring all that in this morning. Welcome, Martha from Houston, Texas. Thanks to having you on here. Enjoy having somebody down in Houston with us. And Houston, Jesse Jennings area. Yeah, Jesse, actually a colleague and friend of mine, used this Ernest Holmes' Asilomar book at his center right outside of Houston back in, I think, November and December of last year, and took some of the lectures and talked on them on Sunday mornings at his center. So yeah, great to have you with us. So what is Ernest at Asilomar, and what is he talking about in Time is the Timeless? Before I jump into reading this, some quotes from me, I want to give a little visual to you that maybe will help set it up. Most of you, if you're science of mind students, you know that we typically use the teaching symbol as a means of teaching how to create our manifest reality through the power of our thoughts. We talk about conscious thoughts, the subjective or law or soul, and how we think through that and it manifests the physical world. And like I mentioned a minute ago, that's a lot of the basics that we get into. It's change your thinking, change your life, change your mental aspect, change your physical life. But Ernest talked about a lot of stuff that was much more mystical than that. In fact, if you read his writings very closely, he talks essentially about us living in different worlds, different realms, different vibratory levels, and they include, in a way in which we can look at it sort of as a hierarchy of growth, is that our truth and divine nature comes from the spiritual realm or from God or spirit, but that we live a lot of our times in our thoughts, and that is our conscious thinking as well as our subjective thinking is in a mental realm. And the mental realm sort of rests between the spiritual realm and the world of form or the world of stuff or the physical realm. And so I want you to sort of like see a three-layered cake here this morning that we tend to look at the physical life that's around us as this physical stuff. But we're thinking about it in the mental realm. We're thinking about our thoughts and our evaluations and judgments of the world are actually occurring in a non-physical realm of thoughts. And so continuously, we sort of, where are we directing our attention? Well, if we're directing our attention into the physical world and we see stuff that's not what we want in the physical world, it sort of reinforces that our life isn't good. And we have thoughts about the gaps in our life, it's not what we want. And so in a lot of times our recreation of our life over and over, thinking the same thing and wanting a different result, a form of insanity, we call that, is expectations that we're defining our lives by the events that are occurring around us in the physical stuff. And what he's encouraging us to do is to move up into the realm of spirit, the spiritual realm, and know that up there is a spiritual truth that we can tap into and bring it into the world of form. And so if we turn our attention, it's sort of like, where are you looking at? If you're in the mental realm, you can look downward into the world of form, or you can look upward to the world of spirit. And where are you focusing your attention and direction each day? And so that's a question for you each to, invite yourself to look at. If you look in the physical realm, if you're taking your mental realm and looking into the physical and defining your life by that, you can be sort of a victim to things that are going on in the world. But what we want to do is come out of that victim consciousness and recognize that we have a power and in the mental realm. And that's that sort of like, you hear oftentimes in our classes, we talk about life is being done to us. That's when we're being victims, but being done by us is when we recognize our thoughts have a creative ability and we can go into the mental realm and create our lives by the power of our thinking. But there's also in that model of the kingdoms of consciousness is a move upward where life is being done through us or as us. And those higher realms come from us turning our attention upward into the spiritual realm. Now, Holmes writes about this. It's threaded through all his works. And he also talks about the fact that these aren't actually different realms. They're intersphered. It's a word he uses where he talks about them all being interconnected. He talks about vibratory levels, that things vibrate at different levels, and that up in the highest levels, we are we're, our highest levels in the spiritual realm. So when we tap into, like through visioning processes or through intuition, we're gaining wisdom from the spiritual realm, and we can use that to focus our consciousness to direct that life into our material realm. So in that sense, that's what Holmes calls harmony. It's where we align our mental thoughts with our spiritual truth, and then bring it into the physical reality. Now, what's this got to do with time? Time is the timeless. Time is the timeless is the topic that we're looking at. Hello, Linda. I'm glad you're here, even if a little bit late. Go back and watch the recording after the fact if this resonates with you, and catch up on the first part. But I think you'll be able to jump right into it, knowing that is perfect. Okay, so time is the timeless. I want to give you a quick quote from right off the bat in this talk from August 13th, 1958. Ernest writes, "Now our subject tonight is time is the timeless, and I have chosen the apparent opposites because there are no opposites in truth." Now, when we talk about truth, truth is God, spirit, oneness. Up in the spiritual realm, there are no opposites. Everything is one. And that's what we talk about. It's that the essence of the philosophy is that oneness is the everything is interconnected in a oneness. So even though I've got a chart on the screen that says we've got a spiritual realm, a mental realm, and a physical realm, they're all one. And you've got to start, you have to look at that and say, okay, my physical world is one with my mental world and with my spiritual world. That's just ways of us to sort of delineate it, so we can make sense of it in our own awareness and understand it at a deeper level. Now, how does time and timelessness fit into that three-layered cake I've got there on the screen? Let's look at one more slide. And this is now I've basically left the spiritual realm and the mental realm and the physical realm there on the chart for you to see, but I've gotten some equal signs in there. And the spiritual realm, we often use other words for it. We call it spirit, God, the thing itself, the all. But we also use the words the absolute, the infinite, the timeless. Sometimes you'll hear the word instead of timeless, you'll hear the word eternity. Okay. What we're getting at when we use these words for the spiritual realm is to recognize that in that realm, there is no time. It is only the timelessness of the sense of an infinite oneness, an infinite eternal now. Okay. When we talk about the infinite, we're not talking about something that goes on and on and on forever and ever and ever. We're talking about being outside the sense of form. The absolute is something that it doesn't relate to other things. It's absolute in and of itself. And so in the lower level, in the physical realm, we tend to talk about these same concepts, but where they're chunked up into pieces. So the absolute becomes the relative. Where in the spiritual realm, the absolute is this great sense of everything is interconnected in a oneness. In the relative world, we chunk it into things where I think I'm Mark and you think you're you, and I think I'm interacting in this world of stuff, and we're all separate and apart from one another. But in the reality of spiritual realm, or truth, as Holmes defines it, is everything is one. So we live in a world that's the relative world. Relative meaning we're relating to each other as if we're separate and apart from one another. That's why it's relative to this and that. But in the absolute truth, it's not. It's all one. The infinite is not infinite space, but it's beyond space. Where in the world of the physical, we call it the finite. Things have limits to them. Things have shapes and sizes, and they're separate and apart. We call them forms. Forms, or the finite, is ways in which we chunk up the infinite, which is all one, but in our consciousness and our experience of this life, we take it into little pieces, the finite or the form. And now finally, in spirit is the timeless. There is no time. Eternity doesn't mean forever and ever and ever. Eternity means stepping off the timeline and recognizing that there is no time. And that in the world of form, or in the material world, physical world, we experience things as time. We chunk things up into moments, so for our experience level. So most of us in our humanness, we live like with this sense of we're on this vast timeline where there's this vast past of little moments that occurred all before I came onto the scene as Mark. The world had all these moments in this history, and then I came on the scene in a birth, and I got caught into the stream of time, and I'm going through these little moments of time, and then I have this imagined future that goes off into the direction of something I haven't experienced yet, and we sort of have this sense in our awareness that we're moving through moments of time, moments of time, moments of time, moments of time, moments of time. But what the timeless is stepping outside this experience and recognizing that we are living in an ever-present now moment that includes within it this history or past of the time of what we experience as time and our feelings and thoughts for the future. So the past and the future are simply, in a way, sort of illusions or mental constructs that we create. And so when Holmes talks about time as the timeless, and he begins with, I've chosen things that appear to be opposites, but they're not really. It's not that time is an illusion, but that time is incorporated into the eternal now of the timeless. Yes. Let's see. We've got the Venu. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Welcome and thank you for tuning in from Los Angeles. We appreciate you being here. And yes, it is all infinite good. Wayne, thank you. Now, I want you to keep this thing in mind that up at the top in the spiritual realm is our ultimate truth. But in the bottom is our experience, that there is a desire for spirit to express and experience itself. And so the way in which we experience life is that spirit created this entire thing. It's all one. There is no division here. But that spirit created the mental realm and the relative world, the world of physical form, for us as experiences. You know, in this talk from 1958, when you get into it, like I read you the quote about time is the timeless. Very first thing Holmes gets into is talking about things like psychological regression and the fact that we create inner conflicts. Now, I'm going to just sort of set that aside for a moment, because when you jump into this, if you read this talk, you might read that and go, what? What is he talking about? Why? What is mental psychological repression and inner conflicts have to do with time is the timeless and the interplay between our experience of time and the timelessness. So it can get a little bit confusing when he first jumps into that, and I'm gonna circle back to that in a few minutes. But one of the things that he then I want to jump in and just talk about the time quotes and some of the stuff to paint a picture for what he's doing in time, trying to tie together time and the timeless. He says that what we do is that the time track etched out of time, which man has created, and it has a reality and experience. The time track etched out of time. So we're taking time and we've created a little time track that we're experiencing, that we created it. It has a reality for our experience. Now, it's real. Is it really real? It's real in our experience. And that's hard for us sometimes to grasp, is to think, because Ernest famously said, when somebody asks him if stuff in our lives are real, and he says they're real as form, he's trying to get us to see there's an ultimate reality, and then there's a reality of our experience. And they're one reality. But our human minds want to divide things up. And so we have a hard time bringing back form as not being an illusion, but just simply an experience for us in the physical realm. We have trouble thinking about being in the state of timelessness and then how time is created by us and trying to bring them together. But it is really, it's a human construct that he's telling us here. He says, time is that which is and is not. I love that quote. Time is that which is and is not. Something is both is and is not at the same time. Our humanness wants to categorize it as one or the other. But he's saying it's both at the same time. And that's part of the waking up, folks, of us spiritually, is to start thinking things that we think are separate and apart or negating them and seeing the unity that is within them, because everything is truly one. He goes on to add that it's not an eternal verity, If it were, the timeless would get caught in time and then would become the servant of time. The timeless, which is up in the spiritual realm, the timelessness is our truth. If timeless got caught in time, it would become a servant of time, but it doesn't get caught in time. He goes on and says, time is the plaything of the timeless. Time is the plaything of the timeless. So time is simply something that we're experiencing. That timeless is allowing us to experience so that we can chunk our experiences up in a way that give us a degree of experience or a way of really processing. He says, like creation is necessary to a creator because a creator who didn't create couldn't exist. A consciousness that is not conscious of something has no reality. So we have to have something out here for us to experience. Spirit, and this gets back to the psychological repression, spirit is continuously trying to express itself through us. We are here for expression as aspects of the divine. We're little pockets of consciousness that are creating our own little worlds in life, but we're united in a oneness with all the other little pockets. We're not separate and apart from each other. So when we are experiencing life, this is a way in which we express as spirit. We are here as the expressions of spirit. And so our thoughts and experiences and the way in which we experience time and form and all the things, our ultimate truth is in timelessness. Our ultimate truth is in the infinite that's beyond form. But our experience of our lives is here in this relative world of form. As we go through this, it's a playground for us to express and be creative. And so there's an urge. Holmes calls it the divine urge. The divine urge is spirit's push that is behind you and your awareness right now and behind my awareness. The fact that we are called to create and express and be ourselves in some way is an urge that spirit or the one has put into us as these individual pockets of consciousness to push us forward to express. And when we can't express ourselves at the fullness of who we are, then we have that's the creation of the psychological repression that Holmes was talking about. That's the inner conflict we have when we want to express our God talents and gifts, and we're not able to do that. And we have to start recognizing where these we have repressed things. And so that's a lot of what he's talking about in this. But again, I want to keep the focus on the time and the timeless. I'm going to jump forward a little bit in the talk to later on because these quotes I think are so essential for us understanding. I want to welcome in Parish from Santa Rosa. Yes, welcome again. If you're here, drop that and your name and location in the comment field. If you've got a comment about anything that I'm talking about or a question, feel free to drop that in the comment area, and I will try to bring it in to the degree that it relates to what we're talking about. Jumping forward in his talk, he says, every time you and I think in what we call time, we create the time and the situation that goes with it and the condition inherent within the thought when we think it. Think about that. We think we're in a time stream moving along. Holmes is telling us we create the time, that every time you and I think in what we call time, so the very thoughts that, well, I'm going to do this tomorrow or this happened yesterday, we're creating our lives, but we're creating the time too. We tend to also often teach in Science of Mind that our thoughts are creating the stuff, but Holmes is telling us here in a very deep and metaphysical way, we're also creating the time in which we experience stuff. Okay, so this is different from what a lot of times we teach in our classes, which is why I think it's so essential for us to think about this kind of stuff, because this is where Holmes was in his later years, was to bringing these really deep metaphysical concepts up. He says, we create the time and the situation that goes with it and the condition inherent with the thought when we think it. That's why Troward said, principle is not bound by precedent. It's funny, I've always heard that quote, and you probably have too, principle is not bound by precedent. We tend to think of that as, well, the principle of spirit is not bound by what we created previously. So if I'm looking at my life that I don't have friends or a good job or money or whatever, we're looking at it in the gaps in our experience of the physical life, and that we're not bound by the old thinking that created that. And so we can change our thinking to create new stuff. But Holmes is also telling us that we are not bound by what we have created in the time track of life, and that we're not bound by the precedent of the timeline and the things that have gone before in our experience. And that just is sort of like it sort of takes the creative power that we have to a whole new level. And I'm not creating new stuff on the same timeline, but I'm creating a whole new time track when I'm thinking. And I can change the time track. If I can change the time track, I'm not bound by what's occurred on the time track before. He says, adding to that, it is new and spontaneous creation, whether we know it or not. We actually create out of the timeless that which is still the timeless enacting time, to dramatize itself, to experience itself, and to take delight in its own doing. Wow. Wow. We're creating time out of the timeless. And we're doing it to dramatize spirit itself, our experience of itself, and the delight of that experience. The delight of that experience. He goes on to say, and every time you initiate a new chain of causation in mind, you're creating a new time that it shall accompany a new experience, unbound, unprecedented, new, spontaneous, springing from apparent nothing into apparent everything. Because all of creation is but an outward manifestation of an inward fact or creator. Again, look at the chart on the screen. We're in the mental realm in our thoughts. And we're looking downward in the relative world of form, and we tend to give it the definition of our lives. The stuff that's in our lives, we tend to think, okay, that's what we've been locked into. The experience of time. That's what we've been locked into. But he's encouraging us to look up to the spiritual realm and truth with a capital T, and to recognize that we can tap into the absolute, the infinite, and the timeless to create new experiences in our lives. But that's not totally all that we're called to do. We're also called to turn our experiences up there to know our truth of who we are. As long as we're trying to tap into spirit to bring forth manifestations in our life, and our focus is on the manifestations, then we're still looking downward in the world of form. Holmes is encouraging us to look upward into spirit. And downward and upward are just relative words here. It's for us to understand it. There is no up, there's no down. But it's to turn inward, because every moment has eternal timelessness in it. Every moment. Holmes goes on to say that this is why Troward said, when he often was saying things, he would say, in this time track. And Holmes says, and he's right, every creation carries its own mathematics with it. Every creation, it is not bound by precedent. And that is why you and I can sit down in our own little time track. But we have to free ourselves from the belief that we are in the time track of the ages, which is never a thing in itself. What is he saying there? That when we can sit down in our consciousness and shift our awareness to seeing that we're not bound by being in the time track of the history of the planet and humanity, and that thing I described a moment ago, where we see time just flowing and we're in this moment. But we can turn it in our own stuff and break our way aside from that time track and see it anew. Great stuff. Now, he goes on to say, he ties all of this back to the evolution stuff, which involution is spirit embedded itself into everything, allowed it to forget its source, and now it's evolving back to remembering its truth. And in fact, if you look at that spiritual realm, mental realm, physical realm, spirit embedded itself down into the physical realm, embedded consciousness or the mental realm into everything, and it's allowing all through the life experiences, to evolve backward through the ability of free will choice. But it's embedded with that id or creative urge or the divine desire to express itself that is continuously pushing it back up into the spiritual realm. And that's the evolutionary process. So we're always in this process of being involved with God and being evolving back to God. Holmes writes about that or talks about that in this talk when he says, this means the descent of the divine spark from spirit, the divine spark impregnating the mundane clod, the physical realm, with an involutionary impulse that will cause it to someday spread and grow by evolution until it returns to the source from which it came. Individualized, meaning we're not individuals separate and apart from one another, but we're individualized expressions of the one. It's like a little wave popping up in the ocean that expresses as Mark or Vinu or Wayne or Linda or Martha or Kathy, all of you who are on the call today or watching this video. We're little pockets of the ocean that have popped up as us to express, but we're all united in oneness. We're individualized. We're not individuals. Individuals tends to say, I'm separate and apart from you. Individualized says, we're one, but I have a nature of me that is individualized as Mark. And that's all of us. And so it's a key that we start shifting our attention from seeing myself as separate and apart from you and you separate and apart from me, but to seeing that we are all one, but individualized in our own way, so that our own creative urge is pushing us to do things in our own way. So that's what he's talking about there. Just great stuff. He says he gets back into and talking about how in order to brings it back to that psychological issue that if we have repressed stuff because we weren't able to express our talents and gifts, and our lives have led into this sense of inner conflict, that what we can do is shift how we look at life and time so that we can recreate our lives in a way where we get to express ourselves. And in doing that, we create a new time track. He says and this is what you and I do every time we give a treatment. For those of you who are familiar with science of mind treatments or affirmative prayer, he says that every time we do a treatment, the timeless spirit enters time as the uncreated enters creation. That's what we're doing in treatment, is bringing the timeless into time. The timeless enters time as the uncreated enters creation, and God becomes his own creation. That is, that which is the creative impulse may then know itself, understand itself, behold itself, enjoy itself, delight in itself. And that is why you and I create. We create for the delight of the divine our entire lives. And if we are repressing and holding inner conflicts where we're not getting to express ourselves fully, then we are we're not living up to the hopes and desires. Not, God wants us to have free will to do whatever we're going to do. So, but there is an impulse in us that wants to express through us. And when we're not living out that expression, then it's becomes a repression within us. And we tend to feel that inner conflict. And so to free ourselves is to express ourselves fully in that way. Now, this is great stuff. I hope you're getting something out of it. But I mentioned early on that I wanted to go just a little bit deeper with that. And I wanted to reference another book that I've been reading lately. And it became obvious to me when I was reading this book that, this part ties to Ernest and his talk on time is the timeless. And so this is a book by a philosopher, Ken Wilber, who's I've been a big fan of his for many, many years. But he came out with a book just this year in 2024 called Finding Radical Wholeness and the Integral Path of Unity, Growth, and Delight. Notice that delight word there, because it's a similar thing, that we are here to express ourselves for the delight of the divine. And that's what wholeness is. Wholeness is moving from our sense of that lower level on the chart where we see ourselves in time and in separate and apart from one another, to moving to a state of wholeness. And in his book, Wilber walks us through what he sees a multiple path process, that no one path is the path to wholeness. Each one takes us closer, but that there's multiple. We have to look at all the paths, and he calls them waking up, growing up, cleaning up, and other things. Each one of them is a way to a greater degree of wholeness, according to his book. But I want to focus just a moment on some words he wrote at the very beginning of the book, in one of the early chapters, in terms of talking about what does he mean by waking up. And waking up, if we go back to the chart, the earlier chart, waking up is moving in our mental realm from focusing on the physical realm to focusing on our spiritual realm. And so the degree that we turn our attention upward to the spiritual realm and know that spiritual realm and have an experience of that spiritual realm is what he calls waking up. Knowing the unity, knowing that we live in the absolute, etc. So his book really is about moving to the spiritual realm, but using different paths and processes for doing there. But we're talking about time and the timeless. So stay with me on this, and I hope you're getting something out of this. He says, most people take eternity to be a really, really long stretch of time, often an everlasting amount of time going on forever and forever, endlessly. But if that were the mean, and I know I thought that, it's like I would heard the traditional Christian message, oh, you're going to die and live in eternity. If you accept Jesus, etc., you be in eternity. And I thought eternity was forever and ever and ever. It was like being on the timeline, but staying on the timeline forever. Mark would never leave the timeline, But both Holmes and Wilbur here are say, but if that's not the meaning of eternity. Eternity is stepping off the timeline. Okay. Wilbur writes, but if that were the meaning of eternity, how would anybody ever have any experience of the eternal spiritual reality? In order to do that, you'd have to live forever and ever, which is definitely not going to happen. Now, we might say that it happens forever in the absolute world, but we're not experiencing time in that place. We're moving into a state of timelessness. Wilbur writes, the solution to this tricky problem is actually very simple. Eternity doesn't mean everlasting time. It means a point without time. Timelessness, because eternity means timelessness, a point without time. Then all of eternity can fully and completely fit into every moment of time. And because eternity is timelessness, there is no conflict or tension between eternity and time. All of timeless eternity is ever present in every moment of time. We saw that with that chart on the screen and with Holmes' writing. It's only when we're turning our attention downward into the world of form and see ourselves on this timeline that we are experiencing moments of time, moments of time, moments of time. We turn ourselves up and know at the essence of through spiritual practices and sense of oneness, we turn up into the timelessness. We step out of the timeline and know that the eternal means that we're not in this flow. Wilbur goes on to say that, quoting this philosopher Wittgenstein, that if we take eternity to mean not everlasting temporal duration, but a point without time, then eternal life belongs to those who live in the present. Think how much of our spiritual practices are talking about living in the present. We the famous Ram Dass book, be here now. Where is here? Well, here is in this. It's the same thing with form. We tend to think form is all this stuff in the world, and I'm going to travel over there, and I'm going to travel back over here, and I'm in Colorado, and you're in Texas, etc. But that is just our human experience. When we step out of the world of form, that we know that we are in a point that's without space. And that's what the infinite is. The infinite is not going on and on and on forever. The infinite is being outside the idea that we are in separate spots. Same thing with time and timelessness, or the eternity. It's stepping outside the timeline and seeing that we are in an eternal now. So being here means being here in the eternal oneness, and now being outside of the time in the present, ever present now. So Wilbur goes on to write, the problem is that we're clearly living in a stream of time, and yet somehow in every moment of this temporal duration, there is supposed to be an ever-present eternity, a timeless now, that is not hard to attain, but impossible to avoid. Not hard to attain, but impossible to avoid. And somehow becoming aware of this timeless now is finding eternity. And finding eternity means finding a genuine waking up. And by waking up, he means awareness of the oneness, awareness of the spiritual realm, awareness of the interconnectedness of all. Thus, if the timeless now is fully present, then a genuine waking up or enlightenment is also fully present, all of it right now. And that's totally correct. Every path of liberation maintains that an enlightened mind is absolutely impossible to attain or achieve. Now that sounds like, again, that's back to our duality of our mind. It says, well, I can't attain it. He says the enlightened mind is absolutely impossible to achieve or attain. And the reason is because it's already here. If something is out there outside of you, you can't go attain it. You can't achieve it. But he's telling us that it's already with us. And all we have to do is shift how we're looking at life. Again, in that mental realm, where are we looking? Are we looking at separation and time, or are we looking to oneness and timelessness? Hmm. Says, if he goes on to write that the Christian mystics claim that in reality you don't have to do a single thing to reach complete salvation. By the grace of God, you're already fully saved. And we tend to think of that as being saved in the old way. But what they're really saying in the mystical sense is that the timelessness and the sense of there's nothing we need to do. There's nothing we need to do to reach salvation. Salvation is just a shift in our awareness, our consciousness. In Zen, he quotes Zen saying, Zen says that everyday mind, just that is the Tao, which means that the everyday state of consciousness that you have right now is indeed the enlightened mind, just as it is. We're already enlightened if we can just see it. If you could just realize the enlightened mind is not attainable, then you would be enlightened. Sounds like a conflict. But again, you don't have to attain anything. It's right there. You are it. The enlightened mind is not attainable because you already have it, all of it. I want to give you a couple of more quotes from Wilber as we come into the final moments here. He says it's pretty inescapable. All you are ever actually aware of is a timeless, ever-present now moment. An ever-present present. That now moment doesn't move through time. Time moves through it. Think about that. We tend to think we're on this timeline, sort of like moving along. But time is moving through us. We're the timeless, having an experience of time flowing through us. That's a shift. We tend to think we're on a ever-moving timeline, a conveyor belt that is continuously moving and moving and moving. We got it backwards. We're ever present now, and time is moving, flowing through us. Time is flowing through us. And we're creating that time according to Holmes. Wow. And he quotes, as Erwin Schlesinger, the co-founder of modern quantum physics mechanics, put it, the present is the only thing that has no end. The present, the timeless now, indeed has no end, and it has no beginning either. Beginnings and endings have to do with time, not timelessness, because eternity is timeless. It does not enter the stream of time. It is ever present. We're always present, not because it's the stream of time for a really long duration, but because it doesn't enter the stream of time to begin with. Just think about that. The timelessness, that aspect of the spirit, it doesn't enter the stream of time. It's only us as individualized expressions in our own mental realm are we having this experience and breaking things into the sense of time. And we've bought into sort of here's my history. But we're creating the time. We're creating. Holmes, Wilber, I keep saying Holmes, but it's Wilber, says you're not living in the narrow passing present, which is brutally squished in between a huge past and a seemingly endless future. You're not crammed and wedged into a temporal sequence running from the past to the passing present to the future, which is what we think we're doing. We're thinking we're in this moment now. We're not. We're not. Rather, you're living in a limitless spaciousness of an all-embracing timeless now, through which all past, present, and future events arise within the vast openness of this boundless, borderless presence. You are not in the entire past, present, future sequence, but it is within you. We're not in the time. Time is in us. Well, let me pause there for a moment and just let's soak that in. Yes, we're creating our realities, and our realities is both the world of form and stuff and the material things that we're creating, but we're also creating the timeline in which we experience it. And it's all one. And if we can step in our consciousness outside of it, that's a waking up, enlightenment is moving up to a sense of the oneness of all it is, then we are recognizing that we create our time track, as Holmes put it. We're creating the time. So what are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with that? Well, I invite you to reorient your approach to time, the past, the present, the future. recognize that there is a part of you that is the spiritual truth that exists and extends beyond the sense of time. I want you to really think about the fact that this experience that we're looking at in time and form is just an experience we're moving through as spiritual beings. So hopefully this has been beneficial to you. If you like what I was talking about, you like my teachings, I always encourage you to check out my website, which is consciousbridge.com. There you can access my blogs, a link to my YouTube channel where I do videos, etc. And it's has a lot of content there that I would encourage you to check out. Also, if you enjoy our programming, want to make sure that you are contributing to the New Thought Media Network. You know, us people who come on here and do these talks and conversations with you, we are volunteers, and we go, all of it is supported through your donations to the New Thought Media Network. That your contributions keep this network on the air, and all of the New Thought programming that is part of the New Thought Media is through your contributions. And let's see, there was Kathy brought up earlier the Science of Mind website for the Science of Mind archives, but I've put the website there in the banner for you to look at that. Encourage you to go out and check out the Science of Mind archives. If you haven't already picked up your copy of Ernest Holmes at Asilomar, I would encourage you to go to Amazon or any of your favorite booksellers and request that book. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I hope this has been beneficial, and I hope that you gain something that gives you a little further step on your own spiritual path and takes you to higher levels of sense of oneness and a sense of peace and prosperity and spiritual awareness of life and truth. So, thank you for joining us today. And thank you for joining in and putting your name in, any comments that you had. And please join us next week where we explore another resource of Science of Mind in our Saturday morning Science of Mind conversations. Until then, take care.